Open for questions?
Yes, we start off with questions, so that's what we're going to begin with. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
I do.
Okay, Marcia, you can go first.
Yeah, how do I sync up my texts on my phone with my computer?
How do you, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I'd like to see my texts that I get on my phone on my computer. How do I do that?
The easiest way to do that would be to show you. So I shall show you.
Okay.
And I don't need this in the way, so we'll get rid of that. That's not it. I'm not going to start another video meeting in the middle of a video meeting. If you go into messages up here at the top where it says settings, you can say general, how long you want the meeting messages to be, and then messages, you can say you can be reached for messages at, and then what you can be reached at. And this happens to be my fake account that I use for demonstrations, but you can also add in here things like your phone number, other email accounts. And so you just basically add them to messages. And then if you get a message that goes to your phone, but you've told your computer that it can also accept messages from that phone number, it'll appear on your Mac as well.
Okay. That's not so hard.
Yeah, and Peter doesn't have that as an option because I'm not willing to buy $1,000 phone just to do demos for a fake person.
Okay.
There are limits to my willingness to go out there and do things like that. Okay, any other questions?
I do.
Yes.
This might be too long of a question, and I may just have to call the Apple people, but you might have something to say about it. My watch is doing it right now. Storage full. Try removing music or photos using the Apple Watch app on iPhone. Well, I don't really have photos in there, or I have no music that I'm aware of. And what I read online says, if you remove it off your iPhone, you might also be removing it from your iMac and iCloud and everywhere else. So I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, that's another thing that it's easier to demonstrate, assuming that I can actually get it to, because I can never remember how to do this. And I can't do that right now because my cable that I would use to connect it is not actually connected to anything. So anyway, what you do is you launch on your phone your Apple Watch app,
Right.
and then underneath that it lists all the apps that can sync things to your watch, and you just turn off the stuff that you don't want to. So for example, if it'll list photos and messages and so on and so forth, and if you don't want your Costco card to show up on your watch, just get rid of it. You can delete it, or you can turn off sync. It depends upon what kind of thing it is. But for example, I'm not planning on taking a flight in the next several months. So I've got Alaska Airlines and Southwest and so on and so forth, these apps on my phone for the various airlines. When you're at the airport, it's really nice if Alaska Airlines is delayed, if it pops up in your watch and says, hey, it's late, or they moved the gate or something like that. But if you're not flying, go into your watch app and say, no, you don't want it on the phone, on your watch.
Right.
And that'll remove not only that app from your watch, but it'll also remove any storage that it's using. So if you don't want photos on your watch, then just remove the photos. Don't remove it off your phone. Remove it Apple Watch that lists all the things that are on your watch. Just get rid of it.
Apparently, that's not an option, though.
Actually, it is. You can say whether or not you want it to sync photos and anything else, really.
Right. Well, I did try turning that off and still getting the message.
It's probably something else that it's using. It's probably something else that's using storage. email messages can have photographs in there, and regular messages, and just all kinds of apps that you may not be using. There are some, believe it or not, some games actually sync up to your watch. So just remove completely the ones that you never, ever want to see on a watch,
Right.
and turn off the sync for things that you don't need to see on your watch. Photos tends not to be that bad. Like if I get a new photo, it'll pop up on my phone, but it doesn't try to on my watch, but it doesn't try and sync all of them. It's just syncing the new ones.
Well,
So,
okay, I'll work on it. Thanks.
I would plug in my phone and show you, but yeah, my I was making some changes, and I unplugged the cable that normally syncs to my phone, and I don't feel like crawling around behind right at the second to plug it back in. So just it's fairly easy to do. But it'll have a list of anything that on your phone that has an applet. It'll list them all, and most of those are not something you want. Just get rid of them.
Okay.
The other thing that I should mention, you can also try restarting your watch. Every once in a while, the watch, for whatever reason, has some clutter in it, and if you just restart it, it will it'll go back up. It'll go to whatever your current settings are and say, oh, you don't want that, and it's happy again.
Okay, that might work. I'll try that. Thanks.
And I am going to go up here and change something. Video. Background.
I have a question, Lawrence.
Yes.
I got a new iPad, and you know, when I want to write somebody a message, a letter or whatever, I don't know where the period is to end a sentence. On my iPad, it's got exclamation mark, is that commas, whatever. How do I get a period? I feel dumb writing a letter when you can't put the period down. The end of the sentence.
There are two ways. Yes, there is a period. It's right next, should be right next to the comma. But the second thing is that if you press the space bar twice real quick, it'll automatically put a period.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Since the typewriter is no longer used, you should never, ever have two spaces after a period. So your iPad and your Mac, because it works on the Mac too, if you type two spaces real quick, it'll just put a period there.
Oh, thank God. Okay, thank you very much.
It not only puts a period there, but it puts a space there, so you don't need a space because it'll automatically.
I just back up. I got it. Okay.
It saves a lot of. Believe it or not, this is something that I should have known because I'm a certified geek, but my daughter taught me this. She can type about 150 words a minute on her phone, and I do not know how she does it. It's genuinely frightening.
So I have a question, Lawrence.
Yes.
Yes, about which router I need when I upgrade my home network to the gear that I bought last Thanksgiving weekend and haven't installed yet. They didn't have the router I thought I needed, so I bought at Costco a Netgear Wi-Fi 6 router AX5400, and I'm going to be replacing what I have with a new MacBook Pro that I got that weekend, and an HP laptop that I got that weekend, and also then attaching my iPhone that I was forced by Verizon to select, that took precedence along with the second gen Apple Watch, which I have been enjoying a lot. And something has just seemed to come up when I had to be online. So I've been limping along with a Windows 10 HP Pavilion laptop, but I need to upgrade to my new equipment before the warranties and help packages I paid for expire.
Okay, now what was the original question?
Okay, the original question is the router that I bought usable with a MacBook Pro and an HP Windows 11 laptop? And the exact description is it's a Netgear Wi-Fi 6 router AX5400.
The answer to that is a MacBook and an iPhone and an iPad pretty much will talk to a rock. Really, they're very agnostic. So that's not really the issue. The more basic question is, who do you get your internet from?
Wave.
You get it from Wave. Did
Yeah.
Wave supply you with a router?
No, they supplied me with a modem,
Okay,
but the router I've been using is a time capsule, an Apple time capsule.
okay. Then the answer is basically you plug in your new router. There, you should have instructions for what the root password is. Usually it's on the bottom or wherever the product description is. It tells you what the password is. You want to go in there and you want to plug it in and then use your MacBook, because you bring up something like Terminal or Safari. Actually, you can probably use Safari. Bring up Safari, go to the address listed on the bottom of your router and type in the username and password that they have. And then the very first thing you should do is change the password to something non-obvious. And by non-obvious, it should not have your first name, should not have your last name, definitely should not have your street address, but something like, if you're fond of daffodils, call it Daffodil 27, because in 1927 at the Great Daffodil Festival, something tremendous happened. Doesn't make any difference what rationale you have, but you change the username and the password and you save that so that you know what it is. And then from that point, you just tell everything else, go to the same address that your Mac went to, and that's your new router. Oh, and that you give the router a name, like it'll probably be called something like Netgear something or other, and call it, Pretty Posies. Or my daughter, when she went to the University of Maryland as a freshman, I had her name her router Control-Alt-Delete ****, which is the Windows command to erase everything. And people left her router alone because they didn't know why it was named that, but they were hesitant to try and use it. Change the username and password, name the router something other than what it came with out of the box, and then just tell your other devices to use it. But the way in which your laptop, your Windows laptop, your Mac laptop, your iPhone, all of those things talk to Wi-Fi basically the same way. Where you get into trouble sometimes, if Wave gave you a router and you add another router to it, you end up with something called double network address translation, or double natting, which sounds icky, and it doesn't hurt anything, but it slows you down.
Okay.
Denise? Hi, Denise. Do you have your iPhone with you?
Yes, I'm playing with it.
I was just thinking you might be. I had the same problem with the apps on my watch.
Mhm.
And so if you go in on your phone, open the Apple Watch
Right.
app,
I'm
and
there.
then go scroll a little bit further down, and then go to App Store.
Right.
And then it says automatic downloads,
Right.
automatic updates. I turned that automatic downloads off. So
Yeah,
that
that's been off. Yeah.
it is off.
Yes, it is off. And I have no music in here whatsoever. And the photo thing is, I read online, there's no way to actually turn it off, but you can limit the number of photos. So I selected an album that has nothing in it.
Well, you can go, actually, one of the options is photo syncing. You can just turn that off.
Right. Yeah, I did that as well. I tried the other thing first.
But
Can you tell me what was what was their actual initial question about the apps on the watch?
My
she was
watch
running out of
keeps,
room.
it keeps saying storage is full.
Yeah, if you look at this, these are all, I lost it.
I've gone through everything again and I have everything turned off that.
Yeah, but
could
I
be
don't know,
off.
I don't just turn them off. I remove the ones that I don't want on my watch. And because even if it's just sitting there, the app alone can use space, and some of them are greedier than others. So
How do you remove it? I don't see any
um,
place that says you can remove it. There's a whole list here.
yeah, but if you if you click on something like I have Hilton Honors, if you click on it, it says show app on Apple Watch. If you turn that so it's turned off, it won't show up on your Apple Watch.
Okay. Yeah.
You have to do it one at a time, which is
Well, I don't have any apps on my watch. I have some listed and it says install, but I've never installed them. Like Amazon Music is listed there. It's like they're offering them, but I've never put them on.
Well, in that case, that's a different question. What I would do at that point then is I'd try shutting down the
Yeah,
watch.
I did that. I just did that. I haven't turned it back on yet.
Yeah, but it might be that just, gremlins or something. So when
Lawrence,
all
my
else
mom-
fails, pardon?
Go ahead.
I have a question, Lawrence.
Yes.
How do I sync my phone to my computer that when I take a picture, that it will show up in my computer?
Okay, the answer is you can't. What you can do is you can sync your phone and your computer both to Apple Photos. So when you through iCloud, so that when you take a picture on your phone, it goes to iCloud and then it automatically syncs. It syncs through the cloud. It doesn't sync. They don't talk to each other directly. There is a way to do it directly, but it's way too much work and nobody in their right mind would do it that way.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
Yeah, you just go into iCloud, you say, yes, you want to sync on both the Mac and on the iPhone. You say you sync photos via iCloud and they say, okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yes,
Yes.
I was on mute. I apparently had a breach in something through my hospital, and I must have had McPhee. And now they say that I need to have it again. Do I really need to?
Definitely not.
That's kind of what I thought.
I'll give you a more complicated explanation. On a Mac, McAfee does nothing other than slow your machine down. It's quite a bit less useful than the cat behind you. So on a Mac, it's just not useful. It'll just slow your machine down. On a Windows machine, quite often when you buy a Windows machine, it comes with McAfee installed by default, and it's usually like a 30 or 90-day complimentary thing. Well, I bought a new Windows laptop last October, November, and it came with McAfee, and I immediately disabled it. And I get these warning messages that, your time's running out. Are you going to upgrade? And the answer was no, I let it pass. Why? Because it used to be that Windows security was pretty awful. But with Windows 11 specifically, and if you have a machine that comes with their new hardware-based security, which not all new Windows machines do, but the one I bought specifically did, McAfee really doesn't do anything terribly useful, because on the Mac, on a modern Mac, or on an iPhone or iPad, everything that you do on your iPhone or your iPad goes through a security chip. So if you talk to it, if you touch it, if something comes in from the outside, it all goes through that security chip, and that security chip sanitizes things so that bad things can't get in. And Apple periodically sends out, invisible to you, they send out updates to update the security of the things that it checks for. Well, this proves such overwhelmingly effective that Windows started doing the same thing. And now on some, but not all Windows 11 machines, they come with a security chip that works with Windows to make sure that anything you type on the keyboard, anything coming in over your Ethernet or Wi-Fi, everything going in or out of your computer goes through the security chip. And that's far more effective than anything McAfee could do for you. And on a Mac in particular, McAfee does really nothing other than slow it down. That's the only, if your Mac's too fast, I guess you could install McAfee to slow it down, but otherwise it doesn't serve any purpose. And if you're really interested in McAfee, this has nothing to do with the software, but it has a lot to do with where the name comes from. Do an internet search on McAfee. You will find he's an interesting guy. Interesting is, and you're really glad that he's not living in the same country you are. He's
dead, isn't he?
He might be. That's unconfirmed.
Oh.
I have a question.
Yes.
Concerning Messenger, and when I like to get texts on my phone and send them from my iPhone. I also have an iPad and an iMac, and the messages show up on those, on my machine, all those machines, and I don't want them. And if I delete them on the phone, they're not deleted on the computer or the iPhone. So I'm thinking maybe I just should delete the apps on the computer, the Messenger app on the computer and the Messenger app on the iPhone or iPad, but I'm not actually sure.
Why would you delete the Messenger app?
Well, I use it mostly for texting with my iPhone, but the dialogue shows up on my computer. And if I delete messages on the iPhone, they're not deleted on the computer or the iPad, and it's laborious.
Okay, you can on your iPad and your Mac, you can go into messages and say, just like I explained earlier, that you just don't want it to be, you don't want messages that were sent on your phone to appear on your iPad. You don't list your phone number on your iPad. So if it's being sent to your phone number, it just won't. If it's being sent from your phone, it won't appear on your iPad because you just get rid of the phone number on your Mac or on your iPad. If you're sending it to your Mac address, yes, it's going to show up on all of them. And you really can't delete Messenger because Apple will object to that.
Okay.
But
all
you
right.
can't sync all three so that when you delete them on one, it deletes them on all of them too. Just sync them to the cloud, your messages, and they go there. And when you delete them off one, it deletes them off everything. And the same thing with mail.
Oh, okay.
You have to turn on sync though.
Okay. Thank you.
And I made a boo-boo. I made a sign-in list tonight for the meeting, but I don't appear to have sent myself a link. And since that's in another account right now, I don't have access to it. So shame on me. Oh, well, such is life. Let's see, have one quick question left and then we're going to start the meeting. Anybody have a quick question?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
It's an iPhone question.
okay.
I've been powering down.
Did everyone freeze or was it just me? Uh,
Until I see the home screen, and then I
I'm-
power it
I'm-
down again.
I'm sorry, my screen froze, so I didn't hear any of your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Charging my iPhone. I'm assuming it's best to do it when the phone is off. So I turn it off, power it down, plug it into the cable, plug the charger into the wall, whereupon it starts up again.
Yeah, there's no reason to turn it off.
No?
No.
Recording in progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no reason to turn it off. There is, however, if you go into, I don't remember where it's called. If you go to the, what's it called? Screen time? Yeah, I don't remember how to set it, but on your phone, you can set it so that you don't want it to accept phone calls after 10 p.m. and you don't want phone calls before 7 a.m. The phone is still on and you'll still get messages from people in your preferred list, like, you know, relatives and so on and so forth, or you'll get 911 calls, but you won't get the rest of them. So there's really no reason to turn it off.
Okay.
And just as another FYI, for those of you who don't know, if you're someplace that like an airplane and you need to put it in airplane mode, you might notice that your battery lasts a lot longer. And that trick works on other things, other places as well. So if you want to have your phone useful, but you don't want to use up a bunch of battery life, just put it in airplane mode and you can still use your phone. You just can't make phone calls and you won't receive any, but you can do other things with it.
Chris, if you're worried about the battery, the life and the wear and tear of charging, in your battery settings, you can go under optimize battery charging.
Oh, right.
And that if
No,
that's a concern,
I'm more worried about static electricity and the thunderstorm that they keep saying we're going to get one of.
oh, I
Here.
see. Oh, okay. Well, and then there's that clean energy charging. I could care less about clean energy charging, so I have it turned off, but I'm certainly glad that I learned what that is so that when I want to charge my phone, when I want to charge my phone, not when they tell me about the whole footprint and the carbon, but you can, there is that setting also. I
Okay.
don't know if you can see it at the bottom for that clean energy charging. So if your phone's not charging fast enough like you think it should be, I'd highly suggest turning that off. Do you know what I'm talking about, Lawrence?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I only charge it in mine charges fairly quickly, so I don't care. Not a problem.
Yeah, but it had defaulted on one of the last updates and it turned it on, and you physically had to go in and turn it off for it to not have that clean energy charging.
Well, it can charge all at once too at night, and that's when cleaning energy charging is in effect. So I don't care. It works fine for me. I do not have a sign-in sheet, which is a shame because I actually made one, but I didn't send myself a link to it. So I sigh. Madam President, would you like to say anything before we start the program?
No.
No?
Welcome, everybody. No, I don't really have anything other than welcome and thanks for being here. Treasurer has a short report, but
Yeah, it's not a big one either, but we had one more member who sent the dues. One was in April. No, yeah, April, and one this month. So we have two more, which our total now is $2,147.90.
Okay.
And there was no expense.
Actually, there is, but I probably haven't sent
Yeah.
it to you.
No, I haven't received it yet.
Yeah. Before I get to tonight's presentation, which is on upgrading, and I asked people what they wanted to have as a meeting topic this month, and I got some suggestions, but I got a whole bunch more questions from people who want to know about upgrading. Before I get to that, there are some other things not having anything to do with an upgrading that I wanted to tell you about. And I'm going to share my screen so that we can, so I can show you some of the stuff. The first thing is that one reason why people were concerned about upgrading is they might get new things. Apple is having their Worldwide Developer Conference 23. It starts on June 5th. What the Worldwide Developer Conference is Apple's, it's for developers. They teach you new programming techniques, new programming technologies, different ways to use the cloud, all kinds of things at the Worldwide Developer Conference. And they also have, among other things, a student competition. So they have the students, some is like last year, one of the winners was 6 years old, who've written programs for Macs or iPhones or whatever. And they have this as a conference. So that's at the Worldwide Developer Conference. On the very first day, June 5th at 10 o'clock Pacific time, because this is on the Pacific Coast, they have a keynote. The keynote traditionally has also been a time when they announce new products. The new products can be new operating systems, the new products can be new services, the new products can be new computers. This spring, Apple was very quiet about introducing new computers and everything else. The only thing that I can recall off the top of my head is they introduced a green iPhone, but they haven't made any other big announcements. So there's a possibility that they will announce some new technology. But the Worldwide Developer Conference also tells developers what current technology is not going to be supported by future operating systems. So the Worldwide Developer Conference is worth paying attention to. And the keynote, at least, is in English rather than in technicalese. The other thing I wanted to mention is something that is that Apple has stopped doing because the COVID, pandemic emergency was notification has expired. You might have received a notice on your phone that said that the COVID alerts are no longer taking place. And since we lived in Maryland before we moved here, we got a notice from both the state of Washington as well as Maryland that they're not going to be sending out any COVID alerts because the state's no longer tracking it. And you can go back into your phone if you want to and push this little button that says delete all exposure data. It probably has nothing there for you because it probably, on average, most people didn't get anything, but you can go in and get rid of that. If you're wondering why those things have been popping up, it's because the COVID emergency is official. Oh, guess what? I did find the sign-in sheet. So you can't escape. I'm going to type it in here. Here's the sign-in form, and I'm going to stick it in the chat too, because it's probably more useful there where you can click on it. If you could please go in and type in your name, your email address, and your first name and your last names. People are trying to get strange and say Phil. Doesn't really tell me who you are, so please, your first name and your last name.
Oh.
And it's in the chat window if you
Where's the chat?
Oh, I sent it to the wrong person. How's that? Now it shows up.
Here it is.
Where?
A thing that won't affect any of you, but it's dear to my heart. The first Apple store anywhere opened in Tyson's Corner, and it's been closed for several months, and it's going to be reopening, and it's going to be opening on May 19th. So if you happen to be in the DC area on May 19th, the original Apple store is at Tyson's Corner, which is just south of, well, actually it's more west of DC in Virginia. So I told some people to go take pictures and movies, and I would distribute them to the world. But when the original store opened up, Kathleen and I and my daughter, we all went there. My daughter was, she was in middle school. We all went there. The line went through every floor of the shopping center, and it's a huge shopping center. Every floor of the shopping center, the entire length of the mall. So it wrapped around and around. It was about a mile long, but it was indoors, which was good because it was a hot day. And this grand reopening is going to be exactly the same day as the original opening. It's going to be on May 19th. So if you happen to be in the DC area, that's something you can do. And something else that I want to know if people are interested in doing, I'm not doing this. This is done by Washington Apple Pie, which is I'm still a member of. I'm still an officer, in fact. Washington Apple Pie is for the Washington, DC area. So it covers DC, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Delaware. On May, at their May meeting, which is next Saturday, David Pogue, who's a former New York Times columnist, and he's wrote lots of Mac books. He's going to be doing a presentation via Zoom on artificial intelligence and what that means for the average person. David is one of these people who is a legend in his own mind, but he's still very entertaining. And if you want to participate in this, one thing you need to remember is that this is on the East Coast. So 10 a.m. is going to be 7 a.m. our time. But if you are interested in going, give me your, send me an email to, send me an email just saying that you're interested in going, and I'll have you added to the list of people that they add for the meeting. And I'll put this link in the chat as well, so you can go read about it. David is an interesting character, and you've heard a lot of news stories about artificial intelligence. David's not really an expert on it, but he'll be more entertaining than most of the news reports. And one last thing that I want to talk about is an article talking about why you should be really careful about getting strange things, because several cyber criminal gangs are trying to develop a version of ransomware that works with Macs. Right now, ransomware doesn't work with Macs. It basically targets just Windows machines, and they're trying really, really hard to develop one that works with Macs. They've not been successful, but generally speaking, the way to protect yourself from ransomware is don't accept email messages from people you don't know, and definitely don't click on links that you're not familiar with. And the first part of my demonstration has nothing to do with my demonstration. It's going to be a new product called Little Snitch Mini. Little Snitch Mini, you can download for free, and I'm going to launch it so you can see what it looks like. This is a map and done with Little Snitch of, since I've booted the machine, these are all the things that I've either loaded either directly or indirectly. So Safari right now if I click on Safari, Safari is talking to all these places out here. If you're losing Safari, Mac OS talks to these things. Creative Cloud talks to this. This is another part of Creative Cloud. Core Sync talks to Virginia. And I'll give you kind of a brief overview of how to read this. Zoom talks to United States and Virginia, which seems kind of strange. You'll notice that it doesn't list Washington State, and that's where we are. What it's doing is that I originally set up my Mac accounts when I lived in Maryland, and so a lot of services still think I live in Maryland, even though I don't. And Amazon has a huge server farm in Virginia. One of the largest ones they have is in Virginia because of the federal government being a big user of Amazon services. So Zoom uses Amazon as the backbone. And so it says, okay, if you're using Zoom, then you're talking to the data server in the Amazon data server in Virginia, and also to probably other data servers in the United States. Mac OS has all kinds of different things that it talks to, including, if you scroll over here, place in Japan. Exactly what that thing is, you have to pay for the non-free version in order to find out. But if you ever want to know what your computer does when it's doing various things, this will tell you what services are talking to like Amazon Photos, again, uses Amazon servers, so it gives you United States and Virginia. Little Snitch is free. It is not free if you want to be able to block things. That's a paid service, and it's a bad idea to block things, because unless you're a techie, you'll block something that you find out that you really need. So it's not a good idea to block things.
Why does Little Snitch think your network is out over the Atlantic?
It does that because it doesn't have a specific place, so it just tosses you someplace. And since it thinks I'm living on the East Coast, it uses the Atlantic as kind of the big bin of things that it doesn't know about.
Okay.
So that's not a great answer, but that's why it does it that way. When you're thinking about doing an upgrade of any device, one thing that you should look at is Mac Tracker. Mac Tracker is an application. You can download it for both your Mac or for iOS, so you can have it on your iPhone or your iPad, and it's free. If you look at the address, it's up in Canada. The guy who did this has been doing this since I'm not sure, at least 20, probably 25, 30 years, a long time. It was originally done as a FileMaker database, and he would distribute this FileMaker database to user groups, and then he created his own app. And to show you what the app looks like, I will bring it up. And this is Mac Tracker. And it's the Zoom bar is hiding it, so it's hard for me to see. But you basically can look at almost any kind of Mac ever, and it'll tell you about them, and actually even pre-things. Like the Apple one was produced between 1976 and 1977, Apple II, 77 to 79, so on and so forth. And when it comes to Macs, the classic Mac came out in January 1984, and they produced until 1985, and so on and so forth. And it also includes things like Wi-Fi things. How old is your airport base station or time capsule? Like, for example, a lot of people still have one of these flat airport time capsules. But you'll notice that the last airport time capsule of those flat ones, those produced in June 2013, which is a long time ago. And a lot of people will say, oh, my Mac isn't that old. I just bought it a few years ago. And they check this and they find out that they've actually had it a really long time. It also includes things like Apple TV. There have been several models of that. MacBooks, iBooks, phones. Where are the phones? iPhones, all kinds of iPhones. If you have a Newton, I'm surprised, but they include that. Scanners, pretty much everything Apple ever made. And they have recently added this for software, but the software is not listed under software. It's if you go to like the MacBook, it tells you what version of the software that let's go with a MacBook Air, first version of the MacBook Air. And the software is the last version of the Mac OS that could use was Mac OS 10.7.5. So it's a good way to find out how current your machine is. It'll tell you what your capabilities were, how much memory it could take, how much, what kind of storage space it had, all kinds of stuff. And the important thing for most people is the operating system. So if you have a MacBook Air and it's the Retina version from 2018, can you run a current operating system? And it says, yes, you can run the latest version of the operating system. But every time Apple releases a new operating system, some of their machines fall off the list. And I highly recommend that you get this free utility when you're thinking about upgrading your phone or your iPad or your Mac, because it tells you whether or not you really need to. And if your machine is not supported, so for example,
Mine.
actually, this says that 2014 is supported. I'm surprised. Yeah, 2013 too. But you'll see that a lot of machines are not supported. Now, the reason why this is an issue is that if your machine is not supported, it doesn't get those quiet updates that I was telling you about that Apple pushes out, and it doesn't get security updates. And that's bad, because every time Apple releases a new operating system, that not only gives you the potential to have new goodies. For example, a recent version of the operating system allows me to essentially control my Mac using my iPhone and my iPad, which is kind of cool. So you have new capability, but it also tells hackers what has been fixed. So there was a security problem with this and we fixed it. Well, that tells these hackers that if they go attacking machines that have older operating systems, they're probably still vulnerable. So anytime there's a new operating system, it's good if you're supported, but it's not so great if you're not supported. And Mac Tracker, again, is free. So that's the first thing you should think about in terms of your do you need an upgrade? You might have other reasons for wanting an upgrade. You want more space, or you want more power or whatever. But from my point of view, if your machine's not supported, that's bad. If you think about your phone, for example, is your phone a security risk? And the answer is, well, your phone has photographs that you've taken. Those are highly personal. It's got the names of your contacts. That's highly personal. I've even seen some people who did their income tax on their phone, which I think is a terrible idea. That's really personal, but there's probably somewhere on your phone are your bank accounts, is your social security number, a whole bunch of stuff that you probably don't even know it's there. I got a legal document from the state of Washington about 3-4 weeks ago, and they did something really, really, really stupid. They sent me a PDF of a record that they had of me, and in the PDF was my social security number. They're not supposed to do that. That's really bad. But since I opened it on my phone, that means that from my phone, somebody could have access to my social security number. So it's not necessarily what you're keeping safe, it's also what other people are keeping safe, because people can do stupid things with your data. I got a security alert from AT&T saying that they had a third-party contractor had accidentally exposed records for $25 million AT&T customers, both current and former customers. And what did these people get? What did the hackers get? They got all kinds of things that are no longer relevant. They did not get credit card numbers. That wasn't part of the record, but they got addresses and they got names and so on and so forth. But the important thing was they also got my phone number. Well, you can now, when you move, keep your phone number. So my phone number, which hasn't changed since year 2000 or something, and I'm no longer on AT&T, because of this AT&T exposure, I'm getting spam because they went through and all the phone numbers that they got in this data breach, they're now spamming. And that's not cool. So you have a lot of personal information on your phone that you may not realize, and keeping that safe is important. In terms of the, where is the phone? I was just playing with that a second ago. It's right here. Of the current phones out there, now you notice the original iPhone came out in 2007. Pretty much everything before the very first version of the iPhone SE, from the iPhone SE on back, I would say is obsolete. And you probably need to replace it. If it's an iPhone 7 or 8, I would probably replace it. Even though some of those are still supported, they cannot support some of the functions that people talk about when they talk about using an iPhone. About the furthest back that I would say that people don't need to replace, if you have an iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 was also the first one that had the security chip inside of it that sanitizes input. So from the iPhone 10 on forward, you're probably in good shape. But if you have an iPhone earlier than those, you probably want to think about replacing them. With Macs, it's a little bit more difficult because there's MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros and all kinds of stuff. But as an example, I had a, what was it? I had an early iPhone, a MacBook. Let's see, is this thing supported? Nope, that one isn't. It's one that was supported, but I don't remember exactly which one it was. I had a MacBook, not a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, just a MacBook. And I ended up giving it to somebody because it was much too slow for the kind of things that I needed to do. And so that was an obvious reason for having an upgrade. It was too slow. But you might have other reasons, like, for example, if your MacBook is the only computer that you have, and you bought it thinking that 256 gig drive was adequate, and then you find out it's all full because you actually have a lot more stuff than you thought, then you might want to upgrade it, not because of the performance, but because of the storage. But keep in mind with Macs, both laptops and with desktops, you can have external drives. This thing up here that says Maple, that is my built-in drive on my Mac. And it's called Maple because I was looking at my red Maple when I got the machine, and so I named it Maple. Chiba, Gifu, Kanto, and Yamato are external drives, and they're connected into my computer using a USB-C cable. Well, actually, it's a Thunderbolt 4, but it looks like a USB-C cable. So all of this storage, which is a huge amount of storage, this is, I don't know, 50 terabytes worth of storage, is external. And this thing that says time travel is yet another drive, and I wish I hadn't done that because it takes forever to come up with. But this is my backup drive, and it's a solid state drive that I bought on Amazon for $99, and I use it to back stuff up. And why did I buy a solid state drive? Because I used to back this up wirelessly and it was taking too long. So for 99 bucks, this is a USB-C solid state drive, and it's external to my machine. So I'm not limited to just the space on my machine. I can plug in another drive and I'm in good shape. For a laptop, this could be a problem though, because if you really do carry your laptop with you, then carrying around an external drive might be a pain. So when you're thinking about upgrading a laptop, things that you should think about: how much RAM do you want? Most of the MacBooks come with a minimum of 8 gigabytes, but I would recommend that you get 16, simply because you cannot upgrade any of Apple's current laptops. All of the memory and all of the storage, everything is on one chip. So what you buy is what you're stuck with. And if you think 8 gigs is enough, and then someday you find out you need 10, you'll be unhappy. And some of the MacBooks come with as little as 256 gigabytes worth of space. But again, photographs and things take up a lot of room. So I would probably recommend that you have at least half a gig, or half a terabyte, or a full terabyte for storage. So that's memory and storage. And the third thing that you should think about is the speed. And it's a little bit confusing now, because with the new M2 chips, the M2 chips are faster than the M1 chips, except that the M1 chip in my desktop machine here is actually faster than most of the M2 chips in the newer machines. So it gets a little bit confusing, but the three things to worry about are how much memory, how much storage, and how fast the machine. And the fast, almost any machine Apple has is going to be fine for doing email, for writing notes, and so on and so forth. Where the speed is much more important is if you do a lot of photography. I just spent the last week scanning prints, photographic prints. I scanned 9,800 photographic prints, and those take up a lot of room. And to display them and sort through them takes a fair amount of horsepower. Also, if you do video editing, the horsepower is important. But for everyday things like writing notes, doing text messaging, surfing the web, the horsepower is not that important. It's important for other things. But those are the things to think about. When you're talking about desktop machines, right now for desktop, Apple has iMacs. These new M1 iMacs, you can go see one at Costco. They have the Mac Mini, the new Mac Mini. Well, there's an M1 Mac Mini that I don't recommend people have. I have one, but it's, for what I use, it's perfectly fine. But the new M2 Mac Mini is much more powerful. And then they have the Mac Studio. And the Mac Studio has a big hunking chip inside and is really blindingly fast, except that the new Mac Mini, for most purposes, is almost as fast as the Studio. I should say it's just as fast or faster. The one exception is if you're doing video editing, the Mac Studio is really hard to beat. So your choices are the iMac, the Mac Studio, or the Mac Mini. A couple things to note: if you buy a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, you're also going to need a keyboard, mouse, and display, since they don't come with that. If you get an iMac, you get everything in one box. One thing that I tell people, because a lot of people I see buying laptops that they don't need laptops, if you never, ever carry your machine with you, the Mac Mini and the iMac are more powerful, and they're less money than a laptop. Laptops, because everything's crammed into a small space, they're more expensive. So if you don't need to carry it, don't buy a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro. Just stick with a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio.
Or an iMac.
Or an iMac. Or an iMac. And I'm going to turn this off for a second so I can see people if they have questions. Do you have questions about any of that?
Would you repeat what you suggested for a minimum memory or maximum memory and storage and speed?
I didn't mention speed, because speed is entirely, there are too many factors. For the minimum amount of memory, the Macs right now, they all will come with at least 8 gigabytes. My recommendation is not to go with the minimum, to go to 16. And the reason is that you cannot add more later on. So you might as well get 16 right from the start. With some of them, you can get 32 gigabytes. Unless you're doing something really weird, that's more than you really need. There's very few people that have a need for something like that. So that makes sense. For storage, you can get on some machines as little as 256 gigabytes. That's 1/4 of a terabyte. I would recommend at least half a terabyte, which is 500 gigabytes, or a terabyte. The one machine that I bought with half a terabyte, I filled fairly quickly. And it's entirely possible that my dear spouse laughed uproariously when this happened, because she told me not to do it. But again, you can't upgrade them once you buy them. You can add on external memory, but you can't add anything inside of the box, because the chip is just one giant thing. Which is one reason why why the machines are so fast. The more you can cram onto the chip, the faster it runs. Some things that you might notice, you'll hear people talking about the speed of the M1 chip, with the Apple's Silicon M1 chip versus the M2 chip. The M2 chip is faster with unless you're doing video editing, and then the M1 Super Pro Max, whatever they call the chip in the Mac Studio, is actually faster because it has more video processing, specialized video processing chips. So if you're editing video, that's why people like the Mac Studio, because it makes it easier to deal with. If you're not doing video editing, or if the video editing you're doing is just editing a QuickTime video to throw up or something like that, it doesn't make any difference. Your phone probably has enough horsepower for doing that. But if you're doing video like I do the video for the church, it definitely helps to have the extra horsepower to do that sort of stuff. But for most purposes, the new MacBook Pro with the M2 chip, the MacBook Air with the M2 chip, the Mac Mini with the M2 chip, that's more than enough to keep you happy. At least one person told me that they were waiting for Apple to come up with a 27-inch iMac before they upgraded to a new iMac. And I've heard a lot of people say this, but if you've never actually played with the M1 iMac that they have on display down at Costco, you should go down and play with it. They're really, really quite sharp. And people say, well, the screen's smaller. Well, an 800 pixels is how large a sheet of paper is. And a sheet of paper is 800 pixels across. And the iMac that they have at Costco that you can go buy tomorrow has its screen is 1400 pixels apart across. So really, why do you need a 27-inch Mac? It's a 24-inch iMac, and it's for most mortals, it's going to be perfectly fine. And if the iMac comes with 2 different models, the higher end model, actually you can plug an extra display into it. So if you wanted to, you could have 2 displays, one built into your iMac and an separate display. Speaking of displays, that's something that you can also add as an external display to your to the Mac Mini, to the Mac Studio, and to the laptops as well. The Studio and Mac Mini, you think, okay, you need to add a display to it, but you can add more than one if you really wanted to. I saw somebody had I don't remember who made it, LG or something. It's a ultra wide screen. It's 56 inches across, and he had 2 of them hooked up to his Mac Studio. And I was making fun of him because in this video, you can tell he can't really see them both at once. He has to swivel around in order to see them. So I thought it was kind of silly. But if you wanted to, you could do that. Any
What's
other
your take on Apple refurbished equipment?
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to talk about that. And I'm going to turn on screen sharing so I can show people what we're talking about. Okay, Apple has this site, and if you just type in Apple refurbished, it comes up in Google, so you don't have to remember what the page is. But if you click on something like Macs, what refurbished machines do they have? It'll list the kinds of refurbished machines that they have. Two things to note about this: the same stipulations having to do with memory and so on and so forth apply for the refurbished ones. Sometimes people will turn in refurbished machines because they bought the machine without enough memory or without enough hard drive space. And so they return it to Apple and Apple resells it. And the nice thing is that Apple resells it with a full warranty. So if you get a refurbished machine for Apple, it usually comes with there are some exceptions. For the most part, though, they come with a 1-year warranty. And so like this refurbished 24-inch Mac with 8-core CPU, 7-core GPU, $1,099 in green, and you save $200. And if you click on it, it says that it's got 8 gigabytes worth of memory and 256 gigabytes of storage. And if you may recall that I just said that wasn't recommended. So they do have good prices and they have full guarantees, but you still need to be careful that you're getting something that has the amount of oomph to it that you really want. Other people have refurbished machines. Best Buy does that sometimes. OWC Computing, which stands for Other World Computing, sometimes has those. So a lot of people have refurbished machines. However, something to note is that the warranties on them are only through that vendor. So and their warranty might be 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, something like that. It's not the same as Apple's. And if you need repairs or something fixed, you have to ship it back to Best Buy or whoever it is that you bought it from. And I mentioned that as an issue because how many of you are old enough to have remembered CompUSA? At the time that CompUSA went bankrupt, they had $20 million worth of computers that were owned by individuals in their shops for repair. All of those were seized in the bankruptcy because according to bankruptcy law, that computer doesn't belong to you. You're now just another creditor of CompUSA. So those people didn't get their computers back. And I'm not saying that I think OWC or Best Buy is going to go out of business tomorrow, but there are limitations. It's not from Apple, and it's subject to whatever conditions that Best Buy and that other retailer has. But there's a company called Gazelle, and lots of other companies sell refurbished machines. There are some times that I actually recommend refurbished machines, particularly to people who are upgrading. If you are upgrading your machine because your current machine doesn't work, then obviously when you upgrade, you're going to have a new machine. But you might have some old game that you like. Don't run that old game if it's not compatible with your new machine on your new machine. Buy a refurbished machine and run it on that, or your accounting program, or whatever it is that you insist that you have. I see a lot of people retaining their computer way past the time they should have gotten rid of it because they have some old program they want to run. And if your old computer is not safe, and if you can't run the current operating system, it's not safe, you should get a new machine. And if you really want to run that old computer, then keep your old machine to run that old computer. Just disconnect it from the internet. Almost 100% of computer compromises in this day and age have to do with connecting your machine to the internet. So If it's not connected, it's really hard for someone to hack it. There are exceptions. There was a guy in Port Angeles lost a computer a couple days ago because he left it in his car trunk, and when he slammed down the trunk of the car, it bounced open. He didn't notice, and somebody came along and just relieved him of the computer that was in the trunk. But that's kind of a weird way to get hacked. But if you have some old machine that have some old program that you insist on working, insist on using, then buy a refurbished machine to run it on, or just keep your old machine and run it on that. But don't connect that machine up to the internet. If you think about it today, you get your updates via the internet, you get your email via the internet, you can renew your driver's license. I don't know about driver's license. You can renew your auto license over the internet. Almost everything goes over the internet. You really want to make sure the machine you're doing that from is safe. And if your machine's way out of currency with the operating system, is probably unsafe. Other questions?
Lawrence, there's a question in the chat from Charlotte.
Okay. I have a question from Charlotte. As a photographer, I need a 27-inch iMac. Okay, the question about I'm going to address the last part first. How do I upgrade the OS when I am on CenturyLink at 3 megabyte speed? The answer is, that's a good question. I don't have a PG related answer. There's almost nothing I can say about CenturyLink that's PG. My church had CenturyLink, and when they put me in charge of their network, within 30 days, I had moved us off of CenturyLink. CenturyLink, the thing to note about CenturyLink, the link part, they are willing to link you up to the outside world in the 20th century, but CenturyLink doesn't know anything about the 21st century. I think Steve's here. Steve had a suggestion that's not a bad one, which is that with some of our treasury, maybe we can buy some USB drives and put updates on them so that people could borrow the flash drive and plug it into their machine and update their operating system from a flash drive. That's probably the easiest way to upgrade your and update your operating system if you're on CenturyLink, because it's terrible operating system. So in terms of the update, the easiest way to do that is to get it on a flash drive. Someone suggested carry your computer to a friend's house and log on, which is also a possibility. As a photographer, I need a 27-inch iMac. Well, no, you need a 27-inch screen. It doesn't have to be the screen that comes with the iMac. If you get the higher end iMac, you can plug in a second screen, and at that point you have two screens. I do that for my photography. I'll have I use Lightroom to sort my photographs. I have just hundreds of thousands of photographs, and I'll have the menus on one screen, and then the photograph that I'm actually working with on the other screen. And the answer is use two screens. You're not limited to one screen. And with some of the MacBooks, you can even run multiple screens. So it'll run actually all of them will run multiple screens. You've got the screen that it comes with, and you can have an external screen and use that for your fine airbrushing and so on and so forth, and have the menus on the other screen. It's a nice way to do it. You don't have to have a 27-inch iMac. You can have a 24-inch iMac and a separate screen if you really want to go that way. With the newest operating system for iOS, for iPad OS, if you have one of the one of the iPads that support it. You can even use an iPad as a separate screen for your Mac. So you can, it's a way to use to actually draw something in Photoshop with a stylus on your iMac and see it on your Mac. It's really quite cool. I'm not an artist, so I don't ever want to expose you to my drawing ability, but you can do that. You don't have to think of it as just, I have to have a 27-inch iMac. You can have a 24-inch iMac and have a separate monitor. Wave cable, are they better than Astound? Actually, Wave cable and Astound are the same thing. So Astound is astoundingly no better than Wave cable. I happen to be on Wave, but I also tell you the trick that I use for Wave. I don't use Wave for TV. I just use it for internet service. Our TV, we use Google TV. It allows me to get the local TV stations, and I don't have to pay for everything else that Wave wants me to pay for. Any other questions?
You mentioned that you got a backup hard drive, solid state, for $99, Amazon. I was wondering what brand that was and what the capacity is of that.
It is a Toshiba, and it is 4 terabytes.
For $99, solid state?
Yes. It's a USB-C. It's not Thunderbolt, but for backup, USB-C is plenty fast. Because I don't really care. It's a lot faster than a rotating drive. So, I'm happy.
That's okay. Thank you very much. You also mentioned you scanned 9,000 prints.
Yes.
What kind of scanner are you using?
Okay, that's a complicated question that I wish, is Kathleen here? Oh, that's a terrible, I don't want her to hear this, but it's one of these cases where I have to admit that Kathleen was right. I have a perfectly good scanner that I use for documents. I had a whole bunch of publications and so on and so forth that I typed on a typewriter once upon a time. So I went and got a Fujitsu document scanner for scanning these documents so that I didn't have to transport them across the country. I scanned thousands of pages and then I recycled the paper. I tried doing that with photographs, and the Fujitsu document scanner says that it will scan photographs, but it really didn't do a great job. And so I wanted something that did a better job. And this is an Epson Photos, it's spelled F-O-T-O something. And it's an automated thing. You can put 50 photographic prints in it, press a button, and it scans them as individual files. Epson FX680W. The W means wireless.
Would you say that again? Repeat that.
Epson FX6 FF. Okay, Epson FF680W.
Okay, thank you.
And it was highly recommended by a bunch of photographers. And so I reluctantly spent money because it cost money. I'm really cheap, but I scanned 10,000 prints in a week. And with the Fujitsu making really bad copies, I scanned like 700 in a month. So I can't complain. It's all of these photographs were at least they're 20 to 40 years old. So they're not great photos, but they're my photos. They're pictures that I took in Japan and in Sweden and in Finland and all kinds of places. Mostly because my spouse was in the Navy, and for whatever reason, that's where we ended up. But I wanted to have copies of them. I wanted them to be digital so that I could start doing things with them. And that's what I bought. You just feed it in, and there's an app that runs on the Mac, and you just say start, and it just chunks out all these files. It's supposed to work wirelessly, but I have it plugged in via USB because I don't quite know how I'm supposed to scan something wirelessly.
Did you scan any slides?
No, it doesn't do slides. It does up to 8x10.
I see.
Pins.
Okay.
There is a slide scanner that I'm looking at because I have thousands of slides too, but it's like $500 and $600, and there's a lot of controversy as to how well it works. I was looking at one of the things. This has nothing to do with anything at all. It's just like something you should know about online reviews. Online reviews are almost universally written by people who are mad. And of these angry people, about 95% of them never read the instructions. So if you read about the latest Apple operating system, and you'll see the very next day people saying, oh, don't upgrade to the newest operating system. I did it, and my gerbil now can no longer have children. And you think, that's not relevant to anything. What are you talking about? But you'll see that a lot of people will complain about things, and they obviously haven't read the instructions. And this photo scanner, I was looking at reviews, and then I thought I'd look at customer reviews, and a lot of them say, oh, it doesn't work. And then they in the narrative they write about what they were trying to do, you're thinking, okay, it didn't work because it can't do that anyway. So you have to be a little bit careful. But I talked to several photographers. They said this was wonderful, and so far I've been impressed by their 20 to 40-year-old photographs, and they look not bad. The maximum size is 7,000 by 5,000 or so pixels. So if for a little snapshot print, that's not bad at all.
So say you're ready to trade your phone in. Do you have a checklist that we should do prior to doing so?
Well, the part one was when you should upgrade, and I gave you the criteria if it's no longer supported and so on and so forth, and what to look for in terms of memory and all that. The second thing is, how should you do it? And there are two different types of things about how you should go about doing the upgrade. The first one is the one that's most difficult for most people, and that is get rid of all the junk. And that can be junk on your phone, junk on your iPad, junk on your Mac. I was at someone's house recently, not even going to mention the gender because it's not really relevant. This person, I noticed that their trash can was full. And the icon said there was something in the trash can. And so I we were trying to figure out problems. And I opened up the trash can because she said the machine had crashed. And sometimes when the machine crashes, it'll leave a file in your trash can that says what it was doing at the time it crashed. And I wanted to look and see what it was there. When I clicked on her trash can, the screen, everything locked up for about 10 minutes. And she says, oh yeah, I never open the trash can anymore because it just does that, it spins forever. So I talked with her, and about 10 minutes later, it finally opened up the trash can. She had 28,000 things in her trash can. She never emptied the trash can. If you're going to upgrade to a new machine, empty your trash, because there's no reason to transfer to your new machine things they're throwing away. I was actually curious about that. So I took everything in her trash can and I stuck it into a folder, and it came to 300 and some odd gigabytes. And one of the problems she had, she said she was running out of disk space. Well, after we dumped the trash, she had 300 gigabytes worth of space that she didn't have just moments before. So empty your trash can, go through your mail, get rid of your junk mail. A lot of people never empty their junk mail folder. Empty their trash. If you've trashed messages, for some reason, people keep them forever. Oh, I might want that someday. Well, looking through your trash here, it looks like you haven't wanted anything since about 2011. So, empty the trash, empty your junk mail, empty the trash do that in email. Empty the trash in trash can on your Mac. If you get a lot of messages with photos in them, you might want to try saving the photos. There's a way if you select a bunch of messages and you go up to the menu, there's a way to have it see all of the photographs at once. It gives you messages will give you a little outline of what those photographs are. If you want to keep those, fine, but keep them outside of messages, because if they're in messages, they're taking up room. When you buy a new iPhone, you get 5 GB free on iCloud, except that the iCloud storage, the free stuff, those are for messages, for email, for photographs, for everything. And it's really easy to fill it up. And sometimes you want to know how to get rid of something. I currently have on this phone 4 GB worth of messages. So if I were to delete all of my messages, I'd end up with 4 GB of space that I didn't have before. In my case, what we did is we just went with a larger paid plan on iCloud, because my spouse told me that bad things would happen if we didn't do that. But just make it, just get rid of things is the first thing you should do. The second thing you should do is that if you're going from, say, a 2016 machine to a 2023 machine, you might look at the programs that you have and find out how many of them you haven't used at all and uninstall them. There is an option when you're moving from one machine to the other. You take your old machine, your new machine, you hook them together, and you can run a utility that's called Migration Assistant on your Mac, and it'll take stuff from your old machine and put it on your new machine. There's no reason to move programs over that you haven't used and that programs that won't work. About 8-10 years ago, when I upgraded one of Kathleen's machines, we found a copy of Norton Utilities was still installed. This particular version of Norton Utilities had not been upgraded since 1993. So as she migrated from one machine to a new machine to a new machine, it was getting migrated with it. And we just threw it away. So go through your programs and see what you're using and what you really don't use. And I'm going to share my screen again so I can show you how to check on that sort of stuff. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm using a new Mac, so I'm using the latest operating system. But under general, no, that's not what I want. I want system. Down here, we have system report. If you click on this, it tells you all kinds of things about your Mac, including the software that you have. And I'm not getting what I really wanted. Applications, that's what I want. And it's not letting me do this because I'm not an admin user. Oh, yes, it is. It's just taking a while. Anyway, if you come over here, you can click on this thing that says kind, and it tells you 30-bit, 2-bit, unsupported. These are things that are on my Apple Silicon machine that I can't actually run. And most of these things are left over. This check register is a program that I helped somebody write once upon a time. And most of these are old programs that I wrote. And I don't care that they're not supported because I just keep them because I wrote them. But then over here, you'll see that for some things, it says that Adobe Application Updater, it says Apple Silicon. It means that this program runs natively in Apple Silicon. Most of them you'll see are Intel. Some are iOS, I'll get to that in a second, and some are universal. Universal means that they were explicitly written so that they would run on both Intel Macs and Apple Silicon Macs. The ones that say they are Intel only run only on an Intel processor, but if you have an Apple Silicon machine, there's a special piece of software that it'll automatically load that allows you to run those anyway. and then Apple Silicon or native for Apple Silicon. You'll notice though that some of these are iOS. How can you run an iOS application on an Apple Silicon machine? And the answer is that's one of the features of macOS. What is it? 10 and 11 is that you can run some iOS programs natively on that, and mostly it's used for things like games. I don't think I have any games here, but you can run some games, iPhone games, iPad games natively on a Apple Silicon machine. But this applications list will tell you things that, you know, I could just get rid of these things and save space. Now, in this particular case, I'm not going to for a variety of reasons, but for most people, they want to deinstall these because there's no point in moving them to a new machine.
Lawrence, can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Since you were just screen sharing, I thought maybe you could just show me. On downloads, how do you delete downloads?
You go into the downloads folder and just throw them away.
Can you show me? I just tried and it didn't work.
Okay. Sure.
Can't hit the delete button. You have to move to trash.
Yeah.
So I opened downloads.
Okay. Here's the downloads folder, and it has.
Hold on, you're going too fast. How did you get it in that view? I get it in like a different view.
Oh yes. Well, one of the things here is I can't stand it the downloads where it comes out in that fan.
This isn't a fan, it's just got the little pictures of each.
Yeah, I know, but
like a grid kind of thing.
I'm putting things in here so I can show you what the options are. Downloads, it normally comes up in a fan view. So you do this and I say open downloads. Actually, why isn't it fanning out? Because I missed it.
Just left click on it and it should do that.
Okay.
Yeah, nope, never mind.
Oh, there it is. I find this immensely annoying. So if you right click on it, you can go into options and you can say list, because when I open up downloads, I want it to give me a list. I don't want it to do that. But the other way, if it's showing you icons, that's because you have it set to come up here and say it's showing icons. So it's giving you this view, which is annoying.
Well, yeah, and it's actually not even that nice looking. It's all the pictures on your screen like iridescent. Like I don't know. It's not that view, but I know where to change it.
Yeah.
And then you can just click from here and delete.
Yeah, or just grab them and right click and say move to trash.
It was because of the view that it was in that I couldn't get them to delete from downloads. And then you opened it in Finder?
Oh, I almost always, that's because I want to open the folder. So if I want to open the folder and use it as a folder, the downloads folder is a folder. So I want it to act like a regular folder. And if I have a bunch of stuff in downloads, this is easy. I was recently playing around with Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly is an AI, artificial intelligence based art program. You give it a text prompt and it draws a picture from it. And I must have made 50 photographs. So they all ended up my downloads and I wanted to go sort through them. It's much easier to sort through them when they're listed like this than if you have icons, because that's just annoying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, I answered one question, which I told you how to upgrade a Mac. Get rid of junk mail, empty your trash, that sort of stuff. That also applies for your phone. If you're upgrading your phone, basically get rid of your email trash and junk mail, all of that stuff. Because as you transfer it from the old phone to the new phone, it just takes longer if it has to move all that junk. And the same thing with your iPad. It just takes longer if you have to move all that junk. So just get rid of that stuff. and make it nice and tidy and throw away things that you're just not using. When I upgraded to my current desktop machine, the oldest program I threw away was from 2017, which is fairly recent, probably for some of you, but that hadn't been updated and I wasn't using it anymore, so I just threw it away. And it didn't need to be updated. Another thing to think about, which I didn't mention, if you can, keep your old phone and your new phone, your old iPad and your new iPad, your old Mac and your new iPad, or your new Mac when you're doing the upgrade, because you can link them so that it'll actually push things out to it. For a phone, the easiest way to do it is to push everything up to iCloud. It should be there anyway, but some people, like, they haven't synced photos and so on and so forth. Turn everything on, sync it to iCloud. And then when you have your new phone, it'll just download everything from iCloud. Fast, easy, efficient. But if you missed something and you gave away the phone, you can't do anything with it at that point. So if you can, keep your old phone or your old iPad, old Mac until you do the conversion. For Macs, there's usually a lot more things to move. And for that, you can actually link them together using an Ethernet cable, using a USB-C cable, whatever kind of thing that you need. You can link them together that way and do a brain transfer from one to the other. If your Mac is so old that it doesn't have something like all the new Macs have USB-C connectors. If you have something that's got a FireWire connector and doesn't have a USB-C connector, the best way to do this is to buy an external drive, save everything using Time Machine to that external drive, plug your new Mac into the external drive and suck everything back. One of the things that Migration Assistant, I'll show you what Migration Assistant looks like. If you bring up Migration Assistant, it says you want to know, migrate something, continue, and it wants a username and password. Okay. And well, I am me. I'm pretty sure of that. Okay. We're going to cancel this because it's going to, apparently it's going to, okay. We don't want to demonstrate Migration Assistant because it's going to cut my connection to the internet. But one of the things that asks, are you migrating from another Mac or are you migrating from a Time Machine store? If you have a fresh Time Machine store, you hook up the drive to your Mac and say, migrate from that drive and just go out to dinner and come back and it'll come back in and it looks like you're supposed to. The advantage in keeping your old Mac, if it doesn't work, you can try again. Whereas if you've given it away or something, then you can't do that, obviously. Speaking of giving it away, on your Mac and on your iPhone and on your iPad, there are ways of preparing them to give away. And if you go into Google and type in, prepare my Mac to give away, it'll tell you through the steps, different steps for the iPhone, the iPad, and a Mac. And it basically says, turn off iCloud, log out of Find My Mac, and do some other things. And then it'll just erase the drive and it'll come back up with the Apple logo and nothing on it. But you don't want to give away your machine with anything on it. You want it to look like it came direct from Apple. If your machine is not bootable and you want to get rid of it, the best way to do it is to talk somebody into figuring out how to take the drive out and beat on it with a sledgehammer. If your Mac has a dead drive and you don't want the machine anymore, the drive should be removed and somebody should hit it with something really heavy. Old dead drives can be recovered.
What about an iPad that's in that shape? It's not bootable.
If it's not bootable, there's probably nothing that anyone can get off of it. But if you, get a heavy sack and pound on it. You want it in this heavy sack so that things don't go flying around. But
Lawrence,
What was that?
Diana,
Kathleen asked about a degausseur. There are degaussers that will work with computers and iPads and iPhones, but the ones that work with computers and iPads and iPhones are so powerful that if you have something like a pacemaker, it'll also turn your pacemaker off. So generally speaking, those aren't the kind of things you're going to have in your own home. But for the example, in the government, we would take entire servers and we put them into this room that had this degausser. We'd leave the room, we'd flip a switch, the lights would dim, and it sounded like we were electrocuting somebody. But that was really expensive, and the machines are genuinely dangerous. For most of us, a big hammer works quite well.
Lawrence, Diana Lee has a question.
Yes.
We have a 2014 MacBook Pro 15-inch Retina screen that was 16 gigs of memory. We tried to buy the biggest thing we could at the time because we wanted to keep it as long as possible. And it still works fine, but the question is, and it's running Big Sur version 11.7.6. Like, how do I know when it's time to retire this puppy?
If you cannot update it anymore, basically that's the key. And at Apple's worldwide developer, I'm sorry?
That was you being reverberated.
Oh, at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, they're probably going to announce new operating systems for the Mac, and they'll publish shortly after that a list of what machines are incompatible with the one that's going to come out. And at that point, you should probably check that out to see what it is. If it's 2016 and MacBook Pro, it might still be covered.
It's 2014.
2014. 2014 could be iffy. I'm pretty sure that doesn't have a T1 or a T2 chip. It doesn't have the security chip. And Apple is putting that security chip to more and more uses. So I think that's let's put it this way: the average Windows machine is kept for 9 months. That's usually because in 9 months they managed to screw it up so bad that they can't figure out how to use it anymore, and they go out and buy a new one. I'm not making this up. The average Windows machine is kept for about 9 months. The average Mac is kept for about 5 years. You're way past the 5-year mark, so you're doing good. But I would, if you can't update it, that's when you need to give some serious thought to getting a new machine.
Thank you.
Or if there's a capability that you can't use, like for example, there are some things that I cannot do unless I have a Apple Silicon chip, and so I went with an Apple Silicon machine. But that's entirely up to whatever you normally do and what your needs are.
And so you were talking about the different, that for many people an M1 chip based machine works. And I think you may have talked about this before, but when we're thinking about upgrading and thinking about an Air versus a MacBook Pro, the lighter versus, at this point, it seems like they're very similar in terms of capabilities. Am I missing something about that?
The MacBook Air M2 is pretty much just as powerful as the MacBook Pro. I think the MacBook Pro has more ports on it. So if you wanted to hook it up to more things, that's of use. But the MacBook Air M1, I found to be too slow. So if you were thinking about saving money by buying the M1, I think the M1 is too slow. The M2 is much faster. The Mac Mini M1, on the other hand, is perfectly happy. It just depends upon what you're doing with it. The MacBook Air, I spent a lot of time waiting for it to do things, and that was annoying to me.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
You talked about clearing out applications that are no longer used. And I have a little bit of ambivalence about that, because it seems like I've heard that you should uninstall them. And that sounds kind of like, how do I uninstall versus just delete?
Okay, that's a good question. And I will share my screen and I will show you what I do.
Okay.
There is a free utility called App Cleaner. And
I think I actually have it.
yeah, App Cleaner is free. And if you want to know something about it, you can go to their website and just go into Google and type it App Cleaner Mac so that you know you're getting the right thing. App Cleaner Mac. And it takes you here. It's produced by FreeSoft, which really is free. And if you want it, you just press that blue download button and it downloads it. And what it does, and I'm not actually going to delete anything because I don't think there's anything I really want to get rid of, but I want to show you how it works. If you go into applications and you find something that you don't want, like big mean folder machine, and you say move to trash, that will move it to the trash. It might ask you for your username and password, but it'll move it to the trash. If you move it to here, it not only moves it to the trash, well, in this case, it doesn't have anything else. Well, that's kind of disappointing. My demonstration didn't work too well. Let's find this one. Let's see about that one. Okay, you'll see that this particular program is called Blue Canoe Pronunciation Dictionary. And if you want to know what it is, it's just, you type in a word and it tells you how to pronounce it. If you throw it away here at the Finder, it only throws away the application. And you'll see that it's actually stored things in all kinds of other places. And if you're throwing away the application, you probably want to get these other things, which is why App Cleaner is a good utility to get rid of things. I will warn you, though, that there are lots of things that people say that they don't know what they were, so they threw them away. For example, in the utilities folder, which a lot of people never bother to look at, they say, well, I don't know what keychain access is, so I'm going to throw that away. And I don't know what migration assistant is, so I'm going to throw that away. No, really, only throw away things that you know what they are, because you might find out that your machine really needs some of those things. But I highly recommend App Cleaner if you're going to clean your machine, because it gets all those little hidden things that belong to the application that might be stored elsewhere.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question for you, which is, I am not able to open the form link to add my username attendance. And it should be fairly easy. Yeah. If you click on the link in the chat, it should bring this up.
Oh. Oh, well, I didn't do that. Let's see, where's the link? Okay.
Yeah, just double click on it. It should launch your browser and take you there. I have one question for everybody, which is, what are we going to do in June? I will tell you that Steve Lockwood has sent me several requests that I talk about Apple TV. And I've been putting that off because I'm having difficulty trying to figure out how to demonstrate it. For example, Kathleen is watching me share the screen, my screen on our TV, and we're using Apple TV to do that. But I can't figure out a good way to demonstrate that to anybody. But well, yeah, but that's one suggestion, is Apple TV. Anybody else have any other suggestions? For
How about a review of whatever Apple announces?
Oh, yes, that is almost a given. I'll probably do that even if nobody wants me to, because I'm going to be watching that. Also, if anyone wants to get up at 7 a.m. This Saturday to listen to David Pogue talk about artificial intelligence, email me your email address so that I can tell Washington Apple Pie, so they can let you in. But I'm going to get up at probably 5:30 so that I can watch his 7 o'clock presentation, because he is entertaining. David Pogue, if you've never, some of you have probably read, I can't remember what do you call it? David Pogue's missing manuals, Microsoft Word missing manuals, Mac OS missing manual. He produced a whole bunch of these missing manual things. In person, he is just really full of himself, which at times I found annoying, but he's still entertaining. So even if he's annoying, he's entertaining. So I'm going to watch him. Yeah. So.
One more thing, I don't see anything here that looks like I could click on to be a sign-on sheet.
It's
Me neither.
it's in the chat window, and I'll copy the link and I'll paste it in again, so it'll be at the bottom of the chat window. If you don't see the chat window, there's a icon at the bottom that says chat. You click that open and it pops up the chat window, and it should say something like https://forums.gly. If you're looking for the icon, it's at the bottom of the Zoom screen. It goes across horizontally at the bottom.
I can see it, but I don't see the form.
In the chat window, it should be at the bottom. It should say forums.gle/ something or other. And if you double click on it, it'll bring up the form.
I found it now.
I'm still working on it. Can't. No, not doing it.
It's not opening.
Well, maybe my chat. Maybe I need to get a mouse out instead of.
Lawrence, how do you spell David's last name?
Pogue.
Yes.
Pogue.
Yes.
T as in Tom?
No, P-O-G as in Gary, U-G, sorry.
Got it. Thank you.
I'll put that in chat too, just for the heck of it.
All right, got there.
Any other questions?
Lawrence, you don't have a really old Mac around still, do you?
The last old Mac I have, I gave to my niece. Anyway, I don't have any Macs that I'm not currently using.
So the reason I asked is because I had a scanner that has a thing to put slides in, but it can't handle any newer than OS 10.15.7, I think it is. So
actually, I have a solution for things like that. It's I run things under parallels. So on my Intel-based Mac, there's a program that doesn't run on anything past 10.12. And so I've got a virtual 10.12 machine, and I run this program on that. So
if you're interested in using this scanner, or at least trying it to do your slides, it's manual, and if you got thousands of them, I think you said, then that might be more of a hassle than you want to do. But you're welcome to it if you'd like.
Well, there are places that will scan them as a service. They're hideously expensive and the quality is terrible. So I am looking for I will give you a call.
Sure.
Lawrence, I have a question.
Yes.
I have an older Mac, iMac. It's probably, oh, I want to say 10 years old. The processor is built right into the machine. If I were to upgrade, do the newer machines now have the processors built right in, or do you have this extra little box?
It's in your iMac that you have. There is a processor. There are a set of memory chips. There is a separate hard drive. All of these things are separate pieces. In the new machines, the Apple Silicon machines, it's one giant chip. That giant chip is everything. It's the graphics processor, it's the CPU, it's the RAM, it's the storage. Everything is one chip.
Okay.
And that's why they're so fast, because the limitation with a lot of machines is the speed of light. And you may not think about it, but if you've got a 1 square foot footprint for your machine with chips scattered all over, and you're running things at millions of times a second, and right now we're running them actually at billions of times a second. If you move a 1 foot wire through that maze billions of times a second, that's billions of feet a second. If you put it on a little chip that's 1 inch square, it's much, much faster. So that's why everything is on one chip. It's one large chip, and it's got the memory, the graphics processor, the security chip, everything is in one chip. And that's why it can't be upgraded, because it's literally
Okay, the answer then is the new machines. It's still the same thing, but it's all within the box, so to speak.
Yes, and that's why you want to be very careful when you buy it, that you're getting enough memory and enough storage, because that's it.
Okay.
You can add it externally, but you can't add anything into the box.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I think I recall last year you talked about getting or buying the Apple Studio Display, and I don't know if that's accurate, but did you get that Studio Display?
Yes, and I'm looking at you on my Studio Display.
And tell me, some consumers have panned it, but other people who reviewed it found it quite satisfactory. What's your experience been?
I have nothing unkind to say about it. It's expensive, but if you do photography, if you do video, it's a really bright, crisp display. It's got built-in speakers, it's got a built-in microphone, it's got a built-in camera, it's got all this stuff built into it. It's got built-in USB USB-C hub on the back, so you can plug other things into it. I wanted more space, and I went out and bought a display, which I've only had for a month, a second display, and it's connected to the studio just using a USB-C cable, nothing complicated, no HDMI or anything, just USB-C cable. And what was interesting is that people were complaining about the cost of the studio display. They said it's really expensive. This other display, which is made by Asus is famous for having incredibly cheap things. To get something that had the same resolution as the Apple Studio display, the Apple Studio display is something like $1,500. This thing was $1,300. So a really cheap generic monitor with the same resolution costs almost as much as the Apple Studio. I can't complain about the Apple Studio display at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
My mind.
Then I will see you next month. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to the June 1 report, or June 2, whatever, June 5th report.
June 5th.
Yeah.